stay away from it. Right? And we know that so many of our arguments or so many problems in society is solved and solved just if we stay quiet many times. Yes or no? We can all think in our life back to some point where, if I just didn't say that time, then this wouldn't have happened. So Allah teaches us in the month of Ramadan that some of these things are permissible for you, but hold back. Don't do it. And then number 3, we mentioned unity. We mentioned that in the month of Ramadan, we see more and more people coming to the masjid. And I mentioned that in the masjid, maybe on the surface of this planet, it is what shows you equality amongst people. The masjid is the most equal place that you will find. I'll give you an example. People that stand and stuff. Is there any preference for if you are rich or poor, or you are white or black or brown or Asian? Is there any preference? No. The only preference in one hadith in Jami'ah Tirmidhi the Master said, the people of understanding should be the ones that are directly behind me. The reason for this is because sometimes the imam might lose wudu or might become unconscious or whatever, if he's incapacitated, so you need someone who's capable to do his class, to take his place. So, we find equality and unity that is represented in the month of Ramadan. So these are some of the wisdoms that we discussed. Then we mentioned, the definition of fasting. Right? We also mentioned the things that are makruh while fasting, that are disliked. We also talked about the things that are masnuh and sunnah while fasting. Some of the things that are sunnah while fasting, do you remember? There are a few things that we mentioned, 3 important things. Those are sunnah fasts. Those we'll cover today, inshallah. But what is sunnah? Why we are fasting? Do you know that? One of the sunnahs is to eat suhoor very close to the time of the end of suhoor. Do you remember this? There's one hadith that we mentioned from Sahih al-Bukhari. What does the Sahabi say about the Prophet? How many ayat could be recited between when the Prophet began to eat and sunrise? Do you remember? 60. Earlier I gave the example of Surah Al-Mulk. Good memory. So 50 ayat, the Prophet between the time he started and between the time sunrise would happen, not sunrise, but dawn, sunrise time would begin, you could use 50 ayat. It's not a very long time, about 10 to 15 minutes. Right? And then we also talked about one of the sunnahs, which is that as soon as time comes, we should hasten to break the fast. And I think that the Shia, some of the schools of the Shia, they believe in fasting all the way till Isha time. Right? So to delay is not something that is recommended. Sometimes, the calendar will say a time and then we'll say, we wait 10 minutes afterwards. Is that reasonable? It's not reasonable. 5 minutes, even 5 minutes is better. Maybe 2-3 minutes is not to be safe. But, in today's time, this is the most accurate timing that we have gotten ever in maybe human history. Right? We know exactly at what time the sun sets. We have very accurate astronomical information about that. So, maybe 1 or 2 minutes, you can wait, and you can also look outside, you can see, but to delay, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, this is delaying a little too much. Usually we ask the time of something. If one you can ask and I'll answer again. Very good question. I'll come to it at the end of the call. Well, actually, it will be part of small part of our talk today. Okay. So we talked about sunnah things. We talked about makruh acts of fasting. Right. We talked about things that break the fast. The difference between qada and kafara. Right. What is qada? What is kafara? What is qada? Yeah. So very good. So, qada is, you wish, for example, one fast in Ramadan, you just started fasting, then you make that up. And there are other scenarios also where qada can happen. Kafara means you have to fast 60 days consecutively. And if somebody starts the 60 days and in between they break it, then what happens? They have to restart again, right? And then we talked about a person who cannot do kafara by fasting, like a person who is older or a person who has a medical condition and they cannot do a kafara, then what is the ruling for them? I think there's something, another option before that, not an option, but what you're supposed to do before that. If the person can fast during winter, remember this, right? We talked about this. So if the person can fast during winter, then because winter daytime is shorter. So if somebody can fast during those hours, then that's when you're supposed to do the 30 days at that time. And if somebody cannot, then you pay the fidya. And what is the amount of fidya? 2 meals a day. 2 meals a day. No, for one person. 2 meals a day, every day for 30 days, basically, right? And if a person does not give an actual meal, then the monetary amount, what is the monetary amount per meal? Basically, the fitr amount. It's half of a saw of wheat, basically, which is basically 1.6 kilograms of wheat, the market value of that. That's the fitr amount, by the way. I don't know if there was a discussion about what exactly zakat al-fitr is. Did you guys have this discussion? I think Sheikh might have mentioned it. So, we know that there are different types of zakat al-fitr that can be given. The wheat amount, the dates amount, raisins amount, right? These are all different amounts that we can do. But in any case, so basically, times 60. So fitr amount times 10, let's say, times 60, 600. Roughly that's what the person would have to pay. Okay, and then we've made the difference between qada and kafara, and we went over some scenarios, which one require qada, which one require kafara. And then I gave a principle. I gave one principle for when kafara is due and when qada is due. One general principle that helps us with all the scenarios. Does anyone remember the principle? If you learn these, then you can become I'm just joking. But it will make your life easier. This is one principle that I mentioned that you won't even have to ask questions if you know this principle. The principle is something has to go through the GI tract. Everyone remembers this? The GI tract, the gastrointestinal tract basically, which starts from the mouth and basically the two extremities that we have in the body. And then we went over some scenarios, like for example, if a person takes an injection, would that break the fast? No, right? Because that doesn't go through the GI tract. And then we also mentioned another principle that something has to be edible. Like if a person eats stones, it does not require kafara, only qada. You guys remember the principle, right? So the principle is that something is ingested through the GI tract that is generally edible. That's the principle. And if you remember this principle, then it's all that is such. You won't have to ask too many questions. It doesn't have to do with the size of the food, but we did mention one scenario in which the size of the food is considered. Like, for example, if a person already had food in their mouth before Fajr time came in. So, sometimes we eat the food and some leftovers, right? You might have a piece of meat, like stuffing with meat or something. Does anyone remember the ruling for this? Then if Fajr time came in, then you swallowed that piece of meat. Then what happens? What's the ruling for that? If it's less than a chickpea, then it's okay. If it's more than a chickpea, it becomes if it's intentional or unintentional, it will be either qada or kafara. Okay, so this was some review. So, inshallah, today we can get into our discussion. So, today what we'll discuss is generally fasting. There are different categories of fasting. There are some types of fast. Like salat, for example, there are different categories of salat. Some salawat are short. Some salawat are sunnah. Some salawat are wajib. Some salawat are nafil, right? So just like that, there are also categories of fasting. And I'll go over each one of them. There are 7 different categories. Number 1 is fard, obligatory. I'm sure everyone here can guess which ones are fard. Which ones? The fast of Ramadan, this is fard, right? So somebody says, I don't feel like fasting. Is this okay? It's not okay, right? This is something that is an obligation. So obviously those who are able to. And then within the fast of Ramadan, there is qada and there is qada. Right? Qada means that you've offered it at the time of Ramadan. Qada means that you make it up later. Right? Both of these are solid. If you do qada later, this is also solid. If you do kafara, this is also solid. And then the fasts that are of nazar. Nazar in the books of fiqh is mentioned is basically in Urdu is a mannat manna. Right? Mannat basically means like you say, oh Allah, if you make me pass this exam, if I become a doctor, then Allah will pass this many days. You understand what nazar is? Mannat? So if a person does nazar, then this is also hard to perform this task because he's made a promise with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The next category is wajib. If a person starts anything nafil, to complete it is wajib. For example, if a person starts 2 rakat of nafil salat, but something happens in between, they have to break the salat and they have to go. To remake this, to re-offer this is wajib. Does this make sense? Anything nafil that has been started is wajib now to complete it. Same thing with fast. If a person has the habit of doing some sunnah fast or some nafil fast, then to make this up is also wajib. So it's not optional. For example, what are some scenarios when a person would have to break their fast? Nafil fast. Even the Prophet recommended that a person should break their fast at that time. Do you know? Okay, medical emergency, that's one. What else? Very good. Well, not invited to it, but if you have done it. If you have guests in your home, and it will make the guests feel uncomfortable that they eat alone, then in that case, the Prophet recommended us to actually break the fast. If you make up that fast, this is actually wajib. Okay, sunnah fast is to fast on the 10th of Muharram. This is called Sawm Ashura, right? So to fast one day before or one day after. So 9 and 10 or 10 and 11. Some ulama say that it's better even to fast all 3 days. So 9, 10, 11. Some ulama have said this. Some scholars of hadith defend this. And some scholars of hadith have said no. Because the hadith specifically says, the Prophet specifically mentioned that to do one day with the 10th rather than 9th with 10th or 10th with 11th, therefore the better was to do those 2. Okay. Also, to fast 3 days of every month, Ayyam al-Biyad, the white days, right? Or also known as the radiant days. Which days are those in the lunar month? 13, 14, 15. Very good, mashallah. So, those 3 days is also, I don't know how to say it's mashallah, but it's better if we call it sunnah, because the Prophet used to do it. And also, on a weekly basis, to fast on Mondays and Thursdays. This is also sunnah. The 6th fast of Tofael, this is also sunnah of the Prophet. So, what types of fast is sunnah? Number 1 is Sawm Ashura, right? The fast of the day before and after is also sunnah along with it. And then you have Ayyam al-Biyad, the white days. And then you have weekly, Monday and Thursday, and then the 5th week. So basically, there's 4 sunnah fasts. And then voluntary fast is nafil fast. Any other time a person has, this is nafil. Then you have makruh tahleel, or you can even say haram. Right? Does anyone know when it's haram to fast? The day of Eid, so both Eid, Eid al-Fitr and also Eid al-Adha, and also what else? Yeah, so Eid al-Adha, and then the 3 days after, this is known as Ayyam al-Tashriq. Okay? So 5 days in the whole year, it's haram to fast. So Eid al-Adha, and Eid al-Fitr, and the 3 days after Eid al-Fitr, which is known as Ayyam al-Tashriq. Right? Ayyam al-Tashriq we can also identify it by when we say the Takbir al-Tashriq. After Salah we say the Takbir al-Tashriq. Okay. And then you have makruh tanzih. You have kind of a lower level of makruh, which is, for example, to fast on any day that other people fast. Like, for example, in the time of the Prophet they were Zoroastrians. Zoroastrians, they were basically fire worshippers. So they used to fast on certain days they had a day called Nowruz. This was a special day for them. And they used to fast on that day. So to fast exactly on the same day as them, this also becomes Muslim. But he was doing takabbur. This is emulating. One thing that we see that the Prophet ﷺ made very sure to do is to establish Islamic identity. And it's worth giving a few minutes to understand this because this is a very important and sensitive topic, especially for us living in the West, living in America. This is a multicultural country. We live with all sorts of people, right? Just last semester or the semester before that, I was looking at some of the courses that come and I was wondering what to take. So there's one about languages in New York City. Guess how many languages are listed in New York City? More than 70 languages. What the course description had is more than 80 actually. Languages just in New York City. Think about this. Just in New York City. I think for me at least, I'm not from New York, so for me this is amazing. This is something astonishing. But we have more than 80 languages just in New York City, subhanAllah. So, what I'm mentioning is to establish identity. It's okay to be friendly with others. There's nothing wrong with that. The Prophet ﷺ was a very neighborly person. As a matter of fact, when he came to Medina, he was basically the first person that established peace amongst everybody in Medina. There's something called the Mithaq Medina. It's known as the Constitution of Medina. And the Prophet ﷺ basically made an agreement, a deal, with the Jewish tribes there and the Christians there and the Muslims that were living there, that they will not, fight amongst each other, they will live peacefully and so on and so forth. That was treaty. So the Prophet ﷺ was very respectful to his neighbors and to his fellow, people. So this is also our duty. This is something that we have to do. But it's important to establish our identity. And this is also what the Prophet ﷺ did. That when it came to the fast of the day of Ashura, because the Jewish people fasted, the Prophet ﷺ said that we are actually more rightful, more deserving to follow Musa alayhi salam than them. Right? And therefore he said to fast one day before and one day after. Similarly, for example, in Sunan Abi Dawud, there is a hadith where the Prophet ﷺ says that if you wear the turban, then wear it with a hat under, because the Muslims, the polytheists, they wear it without a hat. Right? Without a topi. So many examples you will see that the Prophet ﷺ actually showed us that this is Islamic identity. And also, in one of his long khutbahs about, after the month of Ramadan and the day of Eid, and you will see also in the day, for those of you who understand Arabic, if you don't understand Arabic, I encourage you to learn Arabic, inshallah, even at an early age, if possible. So, on the day of Eid, you will see that the Khatib will recite one hadith. And in that hadith, the Prophet ﷺ, he said, لِكُلِّ قَوْمٍ عِيدٌ وَهَذَا عِيدُنَا. You might have heard it so many times that you might even have memorized this part. لِكُلِّ قَوْمٍ عِيدٌ وَهَذَا عِيدُنَا. The Prophet ﷺ says, every nation, every people, they have days of festivity. They have days where they rejoice themselves. And he says, وَهَذَا عِيدُنَا. This is our Eid. This is when we enjoy ourselves. Right? So, again, the Prophet ﷺ is demonstrating that these are our days of enjoying, these are our days of festival, and there are other days for other people to have festival. Right? Why am I mentioning all of this? Because this is why the fuqaha, the jurists, they wrote that it's makruh to fast when people of other religions. If you are singling out that day to fast, then it becomes makruh to fast them. Does that make sense? Okay. Like this also to fast, there's a fast that's known as Sawm al-Dahr, basically to fast all the time, every single day. This is also makruh. Why? Because in one hadith, the Prophet ﷺ, the three people that came to the house of the Prophet ﷺ, you guys do have a class of Riyadh al-Salihin, so this hadith was taken in Riyadh al-Salihin. So, three people came to the Prophet ﷺ and they asked the family of the Prophet ﷺ, what is his worship like? And so, one of the wives of the Prophet ﷺ, he described basically, this is how it's prayed, this is how it's fasting. And he described, he said, the Prophet ﷺ, this is what he does. And the Sahaba that came there, they were like, actually I will do this. One person said, every single night I will stay up and pray the Hijjah. Another person said, I will fast every single day. And the Prophet ﷺ, when he read this, he got upset. He said, do you think are trying to compete with me in taqwa? Obviously, no human being can ever surpass the Prophet ﷺ. Can they? Is it possible? So let's say a person was doing all 5 things. Nobody can surpass the Prophet ﷺ. Right? As a matter of fact, the closest relationship that Allah has with any human being, forget any human being, any creature, is the Prophet ﷺ. We know that during the Arab, Jibreel alayhi salam went, he went to all the stars and then to that he went to her, and then after that there was a point he said, there is walls between me and Allah, and if I cross even one of those walls, then I will be completely destroyed. But the Prophet crossed those walls. The Sahih Muslim, the Hadith is that the closest creature to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the Prophet ﷺ. So the Prophet got upset. He said that you can't compete with me in taqwa. He said, some days I'll fast and some days I don't fast. Moderation is important. And this is why the Sahaba write that to fast every single day continuously is something that is makruh. Also to fast 2 days consecutively without any iftar or suhoor. Consecutively means like you don't eat even at night. 2 days consecutively this is also makruh. It's going to be more like 36, but basically that's the idea. Because you're starting in the morning, doing one whole day, and so it's roughly 36. So this is also something that is considered makruh. So we went over the 7 types of fast, right? Starting with Fard, then we went to Wajib, then we went to Sunnah, and then Mustahab basically, and then we went to makruh taqweem haram and makruh tanzih. Okay, we talked about how does basically the month of Ramadan get determined. The brother is asking basically to do and so a few things. Number one, I'll mention what we have in the next step, and then I'll get into the question of this Islam's relationship with science. Like, what is the relationship between science and religion? Right? So, we'll cover that as well. So, as we know, the month of the Islamic calendar, the lunar calendar, will get established by the lunar cycle, not the solar cycle. Right? We know that the Gregorian calendar, like for example, in January, February, and so on and so forth, this is established through the sun, right? The cycle of the sun, or basically the not rotation. What am I forgetting? I want to say ellipsis, but it's not ellipsis either. But anyway, basically the motion of the earth moves. Sorry? No, it's not ellipsis that I'm looking for. It's the orbit. Yeah. So anyway, the Islamic months are through the lunar cycles. So the way we know that the next month, the new month has started, is basically by the sighting of the crescent moon, so the sighting of the new moon. And the requirement that is there, if for the beginning of the month of Ramadan, if there is clouds, like let's say there is obstruction, not only clouds but any kind of atmospheric conditions, like clouds or something like that, then the sighting of one upright, trustworthy person is sufficient, right? For the conclusion of the month of Ramadan, basically for Eid, then there must be at least 3 male witnesses, and if not 2 male witnesses, then 1 male and 2 females. That's basically for the end of Ramadan, so Eid basically. If there are no obstruction in the sky, if there is no atmospheric condition, no clouds, no fog or anything like that, then there must be a large body, what is known as a general body, large body of people, because there is no obstruction, it can be clear, right, to fight the new person. And then for Eid al-Adha, this is winning the flag. Now when it comes to global versus local versus astronomical calculation, so I'm going to explain this in a very short summary, because it's not necessarily the topic of our discussion. So, if you go back to the time of the Prophet right, everyone was very localized in the sense that the people of Medina were aware of the things in Medina. like I said, that we act on impulses today. So if you want to say something negative to somebody, all you have to do is take out your phone and write a couple of words and it's gone, right? Back in the days, if you were angry at somebody, what did you have to do? You wanted to say something to them, and they live in a different city. What do you have to do? Not only that, you write a letter, give it to the pigeon finds the person, right? By the time you finish writing the letter, you're like, okay, I don't want to write this one. Right? I'm not even upset at this time. It's not even that bad, right? So, my point of mentioning this is that things were a lot more localized. Today, things are very globalized. We have social media, we have the news, right? Anything that happens, hours of flight away, we can find out about, seconds, or even maybe instantaneously as it happens, right? There are benefits to this, and there are confusions that are also caused by this. The benefits of it are actually very great. For example, right now, the situation in Gaza, the reason why we are so aware of it, and as a matter of fact, more than ever in history, even non-Muslims, non-Palestinians, they're also more aware of it. Why? Because it's not just coming from CNN and Fox News, right? It's coming from independent sources, decentralized media. Basically, people on Reddit, people on Twitter, people on it's called X now, I guess, but on Discord, right? People are just sharing basically media. So there are benefits of that. There's also disadvantages, but we're too aware of things that happen elsewhere. For example, you'll find a person that will say, oh, the day of Arafah is happening in Makkah on this day, then why are we doing it differently here? Okay? This is a common question that a lot of people have. At the same time, can somebody ask this question? If they're playing Asr over there at this time, then why don't they play Asr over here? They must be united. Right? They must be united. Let's pray at the same time. As a matter of fact, we can even follow the Imam in the fact. Can they be a better Jama'ah than the Jama'ah in Makkah? No, right? So, obviously, these are confusions. These are not bad questions. I'm not going to say they're bad questions. These are confusing because, we have too much information, right? But now, what do we do with that information? So, in the time of the Prophet, things were very localized. There's one asar in the time of Umar radiallahu anhu, one person was visiting from outside of Medina, right? And he came to Medina, and he was about to go back, and he asked Umar radiallahu anhu, he said, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, should I follow the hiding that was done in Medina al-Munawwara, or should I go back to my people and see what they've done and follow that? And he said, look, if you reach there before, then follow what they say, don't follow what is happening here. Again, things were very, very decentralized. Things were very localized. So the local position, this is where it comes from. But the asl, from the time of the Prophet, the Sunnah of the Prophet, was to keep things basically localized, right? Like there's a whole question like how far is local? Is it the city? Is it the country? These country borders is not something that Sharia has defined. It's nation states become together something. There's a lot to be said about the idea of borders. There are many authors that have written papers on this, right? The idea of this kind of social construct, this invented idea of a nation. A nation is not something real. Like somebody is saying, Pakistan and Bengali. This is not even something real. Why is this not something real? Who made these borders? Allah made these borders? Did he not? At the end of the day, we're one united ummah. Our brotherhood, our fraternity for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, through Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Doesn't matter where the border ends. Tomorrow there might be a new border. Right? So what is local, what is global, that's another question. Generally, the fuqaha, the muftis of the last century, they have agreed that virtually where an entire, for example, if you were to receive fighting from one place, to apply it to another place would be a completely different way. The fighting can apply. That's still considered local. In my opinion, this is a very wide definition of local because that's maybe 1/3 of the globe. Right? This doesn't sound very local, but that's right. This is what the majority of Muslims basically agreed upon. Then you have the global position. The global position means that anywhere in the world where the moon is sighted, this is sufficient for people to follow. This is something that some ulama have opted for. In this camp, you also have two groups. One that follows the kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and one that says Saudi Arabia is not reliable, will follow any other siding except Saudi Arabia. We also have this position. The reason for this is because there are many times when Saudi Arabia announced that they said, oh, somebody sighted the moon, but astronomically it's impossible that anybody could have sighted the moon at that time of the day. Again, like I said, now we have enough technology that we can tell when you call actually visibility maps. Right? You can see maps. If you guys want, I can even show you examples of it with you. Basically, you can see where the moon will be visible and roughly around what time. Right? Astronomically, we can know what's going to be visible, what's not going to be visible. So how somebody sighted the moon at that time in Saudi Arabia, even with the telescope, will basically have been impossible. Right? So this is why some global councils, they discredit Saudi Arabia. So within the global camp, you have like two opinions. The third camp, which is a much more recent and new opinion, is to follow astronomical calculations. Astronomical calculations will say we will calculate from years, like the next, let's say 15 years. We will calculate, will it be possible for people to sight the moon or not? Right? If it is possible for them to sight, that means that the month of Ramadan will start. And if it's not possible, astronomically, then the month of Ramadan. Basically, through calculation, what humans usually would have done. So this is, look, the first Quran said that we are a nation of people that are not very literate, but today we have enough science and enough technology. So we can know for the next 15, 20, 25, 50 years when the moon can be sighted and when it cannot be sighted. Let's follow the calculation. However, this is actually a very strange and minority opinion. Right? If you look in the 1800 years of Islamic scholarship, you will only find like 5 people that held this opinion. One of them was a very famous Shafi'i scholar, Sheikh, and majority of the Shafi'is disagree with him on this. Right? So you will not find too many opinions. There are literally amongst thousands of scholars within the history of thousands of great within the history of Islam, you will find literally 5 people, roughly 5 people who have held this opinion. So it's a very minority opinion, and it's something that has been adopted much more recently. And the reason for adopting it is mostly so that people can tell their work or their school that this is what they major in and need some time off. So these are the different opinions. My recommendation to you is whichever masjid is your local masjid and your local community. I won't say local masjid, in the US is too many masjid, right? But I say your local community, the one that you're comfortable with, you like going on there, you ask all your questions with the programs there. I would say whatever they're doing, just follow that. There is no need to Facebook now and such. The other thing is I would say, if there is one scholar, one mufti, one shaykh, whoever, that you have a good connection with, right? And you always ask him your fit question, you can ask him, and whatever he tells you, just follow him, right? But I have laid out the 3 or 4 different positions, right? One was local moon sighting. This is the safest. Local moon sighting is the safest because that's what was done since the time of the Prophet. And the hadith in Bukhari and Muslim is clear. إِذَا رَأَيْتُمُ الْهِلَالَ, when you see the hilal. So the focus is not whether the moon is there or not. The focus is, did you actually see it or not, right? The hadith is very clear. There are multiple hadith. There's over 30 hadith for this, right? So that you can say the safest position. Global is also an accepted position, and calculations is a very recent and new position that many masajid and imams have decided to adopt. But from a fiqh, this evidence-based perspective, it's not a very strong one. But again, some imams follow it. I wouldn't say that this is something that is disrespecting people over or start arguing start causing any kind of fitna. Like I said, that if you rely on one scholar, you like one scholar, then just follow them. And inshallah, abide by that. And Allah create barakah in our decisions. That's what I want to say. Is there any question, inshallah? We can take the question. Yeah, so I'll just repeat the question from the other. You said that we mentioned a few categories for fasting, and within there we have material and so on. That's the fast. We noticed that some people during the Hajj season they fast. So during the Hajj season, there's nothing wrong to fast as long as it's not on the day of Eid. Which day of the Fajr is that? Day of Eid. Right? And then 10th, 11th, 12th. Right? These 4 days. If they're fasting in these 4 days, then that's not permissible. Other than that, anytime before that, anytime after that, it's fine. Some people go early for that. Some people stay later. So if you fast those days, it's fine. It's not wrong. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, so I'm not aware of the exact details of the sickness, so I can't give you like a exact opinion, but I'll give you the general guidelines. Generally, for any medical condition, what I would recommend, the proper way to do it is you find either a Muslim knowledgeable doctor, if you cannot find, for example, there are scholars who are also medical doctors, like Dr. Muslim Khan and Dr. Muslim al There are multiple doctors that are also scholars, like the ulama who study 7, 8 years, and the professors. You can ask them. It's one option. Second option is that you take what the doctor has said and you take it from it. You explain the exact condition, this is what it's called. Not to need to do research. For example, when I was a student in the Jamiat Islam and I was studying in the Tofael University, we received questions like that, like of a medical nature, can a person perform abortion in XYZ scenario, can they do this, can they do that, is it okay for them to take it, cannabis, like basically marijuana for medical purposes. So we have to discuss on these. What we did is we always collaborated with doctors, with the experts, medical experts. So you can combine that basically. They can mostly explain that condition and he'll see the condition and let you know if this is valid. A lot of times a non-Muslim doctor will not really understand the significance of fasting and like exactly how bad is it to fast. They're not clearly explaining that. So to go to an actual medical expert and then to take the opinion of a Muslim, that's better. But if it's basically something that we conclude that she cannot be fasting, then she should be super fast. The other option, again, like I said, during winter, if it's better, if it's easier for her to fast at that time because the day is shorter, like the first priority. You should do Qada on those days. You should remake the fast days during that time, the shorter days. If even that she cannot do, then Tofael, like Tofael and not Tofael, sorry, Fidya. That's a very good question, actually. A lot of people have this question. If you already have some Qada and Kafara from the previous Ramadan, then is that a problem for the next Ramadan? It's not a problem. You can fast for this Ramadan, finish it, and then do the Qada for last year, or within the past 5 years or the last 15 years, whatever. You can do them anytime. If you don't delay, you delay them, it never happens. So try to do it as fast as you can. But it's not an impediment, it doesn't become an obstacle for this Ramadan. No. You cannot combine the two intentions in one farad. So any farad, whether it's salat or whether it's fasting, like for example, I cannot fast today and make intention that I'm fasting for Ramadan and also for the 14th system. You cannot actually mix any intention with the farad. Same thing with also salat. I cannot like Fajr salat that I'm trying to record salat, but also I'm trying to record salat to Fajr or like salat to or something like that. You can't combine other intentions with salat. Any other questions? Okay, so very good question. If you haven't missed any other side of prayer in your life, now this is very rare. So most people this is very rare. Even for my case, for example, right? This is not my case. So if a person has never missed any salat in their life, when they miss their first few salats, they are known as Sahib al-Tawheed. Basically, what they're supposed to do is they're supposed to pray those salats in sequence, like if they miss Fajr, then Zuhr, then Asr. And before they can pray Maghrib, they have to finish those prayers and then they can pray in the Eid. Right? This is taken from hadith. However, majority of people, they miss more than 5 salats. Right? If a person has missed more than 5 salats in their life, then any time you can do qada. So, if you're asking, can I just do nafil instead? No. You have to do qada. So, for example, you missed Dhuhr, then my recommendation would be that tomorrow after Salat al-Dhuhr, say another 4 rakat, make intention of doing qada for that one. And so on and so forth. But you have to make intention that this is the qada for the qada I missed on that day. Okay, so there are no other questions, then Allah will leave it at that. Jazakallah khair for attending. I'm hoping the most of you have attended all 4 sessions. I'm sure we've learned so much, me and you both. So Allah bless your time and Allah reward you. I'll just leave you with one question. This might feel like a small abstract. You think about it. This program is going to happen, so there's nothing small. The eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is one of the best things that anyone can be doing. And one Sahih hadith of Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says, وَإِنَّ الْمَلَائِكَةَ لَا تَضَعُ أَجْنِحَتَهَا رِيضًا لِطَالِبِ الْعِلْمِ. The person who comes to seek knowledge, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says, the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says that the angels, they lay down their wings out of respect for these people. Right? And in the same hadith, the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says that the entire creation, the makhluq of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as long as these people are seeking knowledge, they're making dua for their forgiveness. And the Prophet ﷺ says, even if they sit in the sea, they're also making dua for their forgiveness. And a different hadith in Sunan Abi Dawud, the Prophet ﷺ says, من أتى مسجدي هذا, the person who comes to my masjid, لم يأته, he didn't come except بخير يتعلمه أو يعلمه, except for some good things that he came to learn or teach. And then he says, فهو بمنزلة المجاهد في سبيل الله. He is in the rank of the person who's fighting and giving his life on the path of Allah. There's nothing small. You might feel like there's something small. No, there's something that Allah is very happy with. So may Allah reward all of you and all of me as well, and accept it from us.